What's up, man? Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Sunday.
No, closer to afternoon, but now.
Or, well, hey, we were having some good conversation.
But we did not talk about Rule 9, and that's what we're about to get into. I'll just go ahead and read this first sentence.
Yeah, you want to throw from the blue book, begins on page 255 in the blue book. And the PDF, it's right at the bottom of page 119.
Condensation next ensues. The fire and waters meet. The form swells and grows. Let the magician get his form upon the proper path. And then we're going to dig into the necessity for purity and fundamental forms. You want to pick it up, Tom, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I'll take the necessity for purity.
Okay.
So rule number 9 is found on page 1017 in the Treatise on Cosmic Fire, and the comment given in the treatise is noticeably brief. The rule is very briefly summed up in the injunction: let desire and mind be so pure and so equally apportioned, and the created form so justly balanced that it cannot be attracted towards the destructive or left-hand path. The reasons for this brevity may be stated to be due to the extreme simplicity of this rule in the consciousness of the man who knows, and its extreme complexity from the standpoint of the casual reader. Only the simplest and most practical of its significances is there given, but perhaps a few of the deeper meanings can be imparted. It is interesting to note that as progress is made upon the path, the forms in which the truth can be given become more and more simple, whilst the meaning grasped becomes more and more wide and inclusive, and hence involves, or on analysis, more and more complexity. Finally, resort is had to symbols, and the cosmic plan is grasped through the presentation of geometrical forms to the inner eye of the aspirant. The cardinal point emphasized in this rule is purity. And in the last analysis, purity is largely a question of motive. If the incentive to action of any kind in the three worlds is based on personality desire and brought about by the applied use of the mind, then impurity characterizes that action. If the impulse emanates from the dweller in the form, it is then subordinated and controlled by the dweller to the desired end. Then the characteristic is purity within the group initiations. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Yeah. So the characteristic is purity within the group limitations. For absolute purity only exists when entire freedom from control has been brought about. The soul is group conscious and group controlled, and until the causal body has been overcome and liberation from its control achieved, the real significance of purity will not be comprehended. Suffice it to say that there is a close connotation between impurity and limitation of any kind, physical, emotional, and mental.
Bro, that's stout. If we look at our actions in there,
yeah,
that alludes to our everyday life. And what we think is acceptable and what is not really ultimately acceptable.
Yeah. And I think it goes beyond just the point of maybe doing or saying. I think I think there's probably some allusion to purity of thought as well.
Oh, and energy follows thought.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we talked about that a little bit last week.
And this is the perfect.
Yeah.
If you're not thinking pure.
Exactly. And that's why I wanted to say that. And I'm sure we get into it in here, but people just didn't understand it's much more than just purity in your actions. You got to get to that point of purity of thought as well. So, but anyway.
Yeah, you're right. It is. We guarantee you it's about to come up here.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
But absolute purity need not but absolute purity need not here be considered by the aspirant. No one in the esoteric groups of the world has yet achieved the fifth initiation, wherein the meaning will enter the consciousness in a blaze of intensest realization. Okay, I read that right. For the majority, physical and emotional purity are the objectives, and primarily, therefore, liberation from emotional control and desire. Hence the constant, even though badly worded injunction in many of the esoteric books, kill out desire. Perhaps a more just rendering for the immediate present would be reorient desire or redirect desire, for a constant process of reorientation of the entire desire nature so that it eventually becomes a habitual state of mind is the clue to all the transmutation processes and to effective magical work. All right, sorry about that. I had another pop up. As progress on the path is made, the thought processes of the aspirant become more potent, and the thought forms created with definite purpose and in the meditation work become more effective in the bringing about of results. It will be apparent, therefore, that in magical work, which has ever to be wrought out on the physical plane, there will always exist the tendency towards the left-hand path until soul consciousness is permanently established and purity of motive has become a habit of the mind. May I remind all who read that the establishing and stabilizing of right habits is, for the aspirant to discipleship, a prime requisite. Those who are working in the field of planetary evolution are looking for dependable instruments, and this cannot be too emphatically impressed upon all of you. People whose emotional moods and feelings run riot, or who lack physical control, cannot be counted upon in the emergency by those who are seeking helpers. People whose minds are clouded, or whose inability to hold the mind steady in the light is inherent, are unsuitable workers in the high places of the world endeavor. This remark need deter no one in these groups from pushing forward, for the recognition of a defect is a preliminary step towards its overcoming. These groups are in training, and this must be borne in mind, or else discouragement is apt to ensue when the ideal is enunciated. World need and opportunity go hand in hand at this time. The great ones, who stand as a wall between humanity and planetary karma, are, we are told, hard-pressed at this time, and I assure you that this is but an inadequate statement of the case. The thoughts of men, since the middle of the Atlantean period, have steadily been attracted toward the destructive or left-hand path, because selfishness has been the motive and self-interest the dominant factor. Part of the work of the Christ when he came 2,000 years ago was to offset his tendency by the inculcation through example and precept of sacrifice and unselfishness, and the martyr spirit, tinctured as it oft was by hysteria and a heavenly self-interest, was one of the results of this endeavor. Seen from the standpoint of the hierarchy, the effort has been successful, for the Christian spirit stands for reorientation to heavenly things. Hence, purity of motive and the instinct for service, which latter keynote is new from the standpoint of the past eternities. In spite of this, however, the tendency to selfish interest is the most potent factor in the world at this time, and hence the critical situation existing between the hierarchy of light and the hierarchy controlling the left-hand path, or the path of control by form and desire.
Hey, check this out though. So what we're looking at based on that in my mind is there was a complete selfishness, right? And then gradually the desire to serve starts entering that complete selfishness a little at a time though.
Right.
So even when there is service being rendered, there's still much more selfishness taking place until I would assume it makes sense that over this long period, that unselfishness starts to build in there, but that's a process until all of that selfishness is gone. And imagine how long and how many lives that could potentially take.
Right. Yeah.
That's really amazing, because if we look at, Christianity as an example, and having these churches, and their whole focus is on the people of the church, right? The parish, or whatever you want to call it, those people, and building another wing for for the
Mhm.
kids, but it's not for the larger whole of humanity.
Right.
So even looking at Christianity in that sense, there's still selfishness built in partially with the unselfishness still.
Right.
So it's like a fusion of the middle point almost, right? That we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, wild.
There's a lot there for sure.
Yeah.
Where did I leave off?
In spite of
Hierarchy of
this.
the life is this. In spite of this, however, the tendency to selfish interest is the most potent factor in the world at this time, and hence the critical situation existing between the hierarchy of light and the hierarchy controlling the left-hand path, or the path of control by form and desire. Let there, yeah, I think I did. That's fine. Let there be no discouragement, however, for the spiritual thought resulting in magical work of one brother of pure intent is of far greater potency than that of many brothers who follow the tendencies of the personality. Though every true aspirant, as he grasps the magnitude of the plan and surveys the forces arrayed against him, may be overcome by the apparent futility of his effort and the seeming smallness of the part he plays. Let him remember that there is a steadily growing group of those similar to him, and that this is a group effort. Under the law the great ones work through their disciples in all countries, and never before have there been so many endeavoring to fit themselves for this function of being transmitters of the purpose. And never before has there existed such a strong inner integrity and subjective relation between workers in all fields and all parts of the world. For the first time in history is there a coherent group for the masters to use. Heretofore, there have been lonely isolated workers or tiny detached groups, and this has greatly hampered the work. Now this is changed. I want to charge you all to realize this and to work to substantiate this group integrity and to develop the power to recognize all such workers everywhere under any name or organization and to cooperate with them when so recognized. This is no easy thing to do. It presupposes the following. 1, the inner sensitiveness to the plan. 2, an ability to recognize principles governing conduct and administration. 3, a capacity to overlook the non-essentials and to emphasize the essentials. 4, a submergence of personal ambition and interest in the furthering of the group ideals. And 5, a steady preservation of the intercontact through meditation and the overlooking and non-emphasis of personality reactions. These are basic prerequisites and should receive the attention of workers and students in all groups. It would be of value if each student would link up every day at 5 o'clock by an act of the will with this rapidly integrating group of servers, mystics, and brothers. To this end, it might be wise to commit to memory the following brief dedication to be said silently at that hour with the attention focused in the head. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May I fulfill my part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. Then carry the thought forward from the rapidly forming group of world servers to the great ones who stand back of our world evolution. This can be done in a few seconds of time, wherever one may be and in whatever company, and will not only aid in the magical work of the forces of light, but will serve to stabilize the individual, to increase his group consciousness, and to teach him the process of carrying forward interior subjective activities in the face of and in spite of outer exoteric functioning.
Man, I suppose that 5 o'clock is universal.
Well,
GMT?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I would assume. I don't want to assume anything, but
I don't either.
my guess would be yes. Otherwise, we'd have to figure out where this book was written.
Right.
What time zone was it written in?
No,
That's a
this
good
is
question.
great, man. There's a lot said there, though. I don't think that's that important. And
No.
if you do it at 5
I
o'clock,
think-
wherever you're at, then it's
I-
going to do this much good.
Right. And I think the point is that there needs to be a kind of a union for doing this collectively.
Well, there's a big recognition of the whole here,
Mhm.
you know, and the non-separativeness of the whole thing is what I'm seeing from this. You know, we really have to get over our self, right? Our personalities. And I'm sure he's going to talk about how to do that. And we've talked about the astral plane and how these things affect us. It's just so much about awareness and watching ourselves, though.
Right.
To watch our own behavior
Right.
and to see what is essential and not essential, and then attempt to eliminate that or let them fall away, reorient, like he says, reorient our desire. Because once we start to glimpse what is real, all of that other stuff should start fading really quickly.
Right. It doesn't even.
But there's a
won't even matter.
process,
Right.
nevertheless, because like, all right, and as I'm thinking about this, it's like we all still have like one or two things that we really enjoy or we really hold on to and we justify. But is it essential in the big picture? Or is it essential for the personality? Is it essential? Like, if let's say, for instance, I like motocross. I don't know. I'm just making it up.
Right.
But I gave up everything else. Is that an essential? Certainly not, because of the implications of motocross. If I'm riding dirt bikes and all these, there's a lot of implications there, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, it could potentially cause harm to the body and all sorts of other, but anyway, really digging into what is essential and not essential and our willingness to give it up in lieu of the group. You know, it's like, what are you willing to give up?
Right.
How much?
Well, it really comes down to, right. I mean, everybody's going to carry a vice until they get to the point where everything's been dissolved away. But really what I think it's saying in here is it's really what it boils down to is anything that is a desire or a pursuit of self-motivation and desire versus something that's done truly selflessly to benefit the greater good. Would you agree? Or
man, I think from our level we're talking on par, and I think at the level, you know, at the levels above us, it's complete self-forgetfulness.
okay.
Complete, whole. There's nothing left. It's a whole different ballpark at that point. Yeah, very interesting. But I think that process of getting there is also very gradual. And he even says there's no need for full at the beginning of it. He says what? Absolute purity need not be considered. We have to at least just get to the point where we're working in that direction.
Yeah.
That's a huge step in the right, you know, that's a huge step just to admit that. So yeah, I think there's a couple of ways.
Yeah, it's back on page 120 in the PDF, but absolute purity need not be considered by the aspirant. No one in the esoteric groups of the world has yet achieved the fifth initiation, wherein the meaning will enter the consciousness in a blaze of intensest realization. So
And I
it's
think
after
that's what we
that
all
point,
expect too, right?
right?
That it's not how it's going to go. So we have to get comfortable with this.
Right, right.
This is not a fast, that's just like saying this is not a fast process. Because I think that blaze of self-realization is what we're all anticipating. And that's not really how it comes.
Yeah,
It comes gradually.
yeah. Perhaps a more just rendering for the immediate present would be to reorient desire or redirect desire for a constant process of reorientation of the entire desire nature so that it eventually becomes a habitual state of mind is the clue to all the transmutation processes into effective magical work. So it's going to be hard work to do that. It alludes to that, but the point is to be working towards that and working to shed away these desires that are really not shed away, reorient, redirect. Why are you doing that thing? Maybe is what it's asking.
We use that example a lot where we say,
well,
shut the apps down.
Yeah.
So, well, sometimes I was saying delete the apps off of the device, but I think we don't delete them now. I think we just shut it down. And so they're there to be used intelligently as necessary.
Right.
Right. But we have to kind of quiet everything going, get rid of the non-essentials.
Yeah. I think if you get to a point, and we can go on reading after this because I don't want to waste too much time, but I think if you get to a point where you're asking yourself why you're doing something that you probably think you shouldn't be, that might be a good indicator that you're headed in the right direction, because you're starting to have those thought forms telling you or asking yourself, why the heck am I doing this? And what's the point? What's the purpose?
Oh, so deep. Yeah.
Right. So not expected to be perfect out the gate, but if you're having these, because it says right there, reorient your desire, redirect your desire. So if you're starting to ask yourself why you're doing this, what is the desire? Why am I doing this? You might be headed in the right direction. Now, I think it's still going to be a struggle to make sure you're headed in the right direction with that decision point. But that's a part of the process.
The struggle is real.
Right.
And it's a necessary stage, and it's the battleground. Right.
Yeah.
So, it's just, again, and I say, you just got to get comfortable kind of with being uncomfortable for a minute until it all kind of works, is transmuted, transformed. The process continues once, I think he says that in the beginning,
right.
Once, you can't pull your application. So don't even bother trying. Right. This is going to move forward. There's things going on in the background.
Yeah.
And it's going to eventually manifest on the, in the outer expression. It's just, it may not go as quickly as we would like.
Right. And it won't be an easy, like, I'm sure you're going to beat yourself up along the way a bit to get there. So.
Beautiful, man.
I know I did. I beat myself up a little bit.
Certainly,
I'm sure you did too. All right. So
I'll take it.
That was all on the necessity for purity. We're moving into the fundamental forms now. You gonna take it, Donnie?
Yeah, I'll read a couple pages. How much we got? How big is this?
Let me see. It's
no, this is not bad.
Not bad at all. But if your lips get tired, let me know. I can take over.
I'll read down to, oh no.
Just read.
I'll just read a page. Yeah. All right, fundamental forms. The simplicity of this rule 9 is such that in a few words, the entire process of creative evolution is summarized. That's stout. On the mental plane, an idea takes form. On the desire plane, sentient energy pervades that form. Under the evolutionary process, the form swells and grows through the right direction of the form and its orientation in the needed direction. The purpose of the thinker is fulfilled. All life is vibration, and the result of vibration is form, dense or subtle, and ever subtler as ascension takes place. As the pulsating life progresses, its rate of vibration changes. And in this changing of vibration lies hid the secret of form shattering and form building. Forms are of four kinds in this era of the fourth round. And the fourth round, the fourth human kingdom, will be, I'm sure the fourth ray of conflict through harmony is involved in that. And all the fours, right? Number one, the form of the personality, that vehicle of physical, astral, and mental matter that provides the means of contact in the three worlds. Wait, I read that wrong. I read that like a run on there. The fourth round. One, the form of the personality, that vehicle of physical, astral, and mental matter that provides the means of contact in the three worlds. It is built in each life, the key of the vibration being set up in the life preceding the present. That form proves adequate for the average man and serves him till death. The man who is entering on the occult path starts with the vehicle provided, but during incarnation builds for himself ever a newer and better vehicle. And the more progressed he is, the more consciously he works. Hence eventuates that constant turmoil and frequent ill health of the beginner in the occult life. He senses the law, he realizes the need of raising his key, and frequently he begins with mistakes. He starts to build anew his physical body by diet and discipline, instead of working from the inner outward. In the careful discipline of the mind and the manipulation of thought matter, and in transmutation of emotion comes the working out on the physical plane. Add to the two above physical plane purity as to food and manner of life, and in 7 years' time, the man has built for himself 3 new bodies around the permanent atoms. Wow.
7 years' time.
That's wild.
It's that magical number 7 again.
Surely, and that's what is that this? There's an astrological cycle involved in that too. Well, I would be lying if I said I knew which one. I want to say Neptune, but I'm not sure. So, and 2, the form of the environment. This is really the evolutionary working out of the involutionary group soul. It relates to our contacts, not just exterior, but on the inner planes as well. In similarity of vibration comes coherency. When therefore a man raises his vibration and builds anew from Om, the beginning, and alters consequently his key, it results in dissonance in his surroundings and subsequent discord. Therefore, under the law, there comes always to the striver after the mysteries and the manipulator of the law a period of aloneness and of sorrow, when no man stands by and isolation is his lot. In lesser degree, this comes to all. And to the Arhat, or the initiate of the 4th degree, this complete isolation is a characteristic feature. He stands midway between life in the 3 worlds and that in the world of adepts. His vibration does not synchronize prior to initiation with the vibrations of either group. Under the law, he is alone, but this is only temporary. When the environment satisfies, then is the moment of anxiety it indicates stagnation. But this is only temporary. When the environment satisfies, then is the moment of anxiety. It indicates stagnation. The application of the law causes primary disruption. Wow. That is unbelievable. Wow. Okay. And then, all right, so then there's the third aspect of this, the form of the devotee. Yes, I mean just that word, for it expresses an abstract idea. Each person of every degree has his devotion, that for which he lives, that for which in ignorance, in knowledge, or in wisdom, he wields as much of the law as he can grasp. Purely physical may that devotion be, centered in the flesh, in lust for gold, in possessions concrete. He bends all his energies to the search for the satisfaction of that concrete form, and therein learns. Purely astral may be the aim of the devotee, love of wife or child or family, pride of race, love of popularity, or lust of some kind. To them he devotes the whole of his energy, using the physical body to fulfill the desire of the astral. Higher still may be the form of his devotion, love of art or science or philosophy, the life religious, scientific, or artistic. To them he consecrates his energies, physical, astral, and mental, and always the form is that of devotion. Always the vibration measures up to the goal, finds that goal, passes it, and disintegrates. Pain enters into all shattering of the form and changing of the key. Many lives for millennia of years are spent under the lower vibrations. As evolution progresses, more rapid is the development, and the key changes from life to life. Whereas in the earlier stages, one key or tone might be sounded for several lives in their entirety. As a man nears the path, the probationary path becomes strewn with many shattered forms, and from lesser cycle to cycle, he changes the key, often in one life, heightening his vibrations several times. See, therefore, how the life of all aspirants, if progressing with the desired rapidity, is one of constant movement, constant changes, and differentiations, and continuous building and breaking, planning and seeing those plans disrupted. It is a life of ceaseless suffering, of frequent clashing with the environing circumstances, of numerous friendships made and transferred, of mutation ceaseless and constant agony. Ideals are transcended only to be found to be stations on the road to higher. Visions are seen only to be replaced by others. Dreams are dreamt only to be realized and discarded. Friends are made to be loved and left behind, and to follow later and more slowly the footsteps of the striving aspirant. And all the time, the fourth form is being built. Wow.
It's a lot there.
You want to pick it up there?
Yeah, I can. It's just
Man, that's such a great example of how a cycle kind of can proceed like that as
right.
well, on a really large scale. And how that meshing, once it meshes a little bit, it seems it begins to come together much more quickly.
Right. Well, and as you're working through it, it says right here at the end, and all the time, the fourth form is being built, which we're moving into now, for the form of the causal body. This is the vehicle of the higher consciousness, the temple of the indwelling God, which seems of a beauty so rare and of a stability of so sure a nature that when the final shattering comes of even that masterpiece of many lives, bitter indeed is the cup to drink, and unutterably bereft seems the unit of consciousness. Conscious then only of the innate divine spirit, conscious only of the truth of the Godhead, realizing profoundly and to the depths of his being the ephemeral nature of the form and of all forms, standing alone in the vortex of initiatory rites, bereft of all on which he may have lent, be it friend, master, doctrine, or environment. Well may the initiate cry out, I am that I am, and there is naught else.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Will may be then figuratively place his hand in that of his Father in heaven, and hold the other out in blessing on the world of men. For only the hands that have let slip all within the three worlds are free to carry the ultimate blessing to struggling humanity. Then he builds for himself a form such as he desires, a new form that is no longer subject to shattering, but suffices for his need, to be discarded or used as occasion warrants. In these days, you will need to ponder on this matter of the form. For with the entering in of a new ray and the commencement of a new era comes ever a period of much disruption until the forms that be have adapted themselves to the newer vibration. In that adaptation, those who have cultivated pliability and adaptability, or who have that for their personality ray, progress with less disruption than those more crystallized and fixed. Particularly now should pliability and responsiveness of form be aimed at, for when he whom we all adore comes, think you his vibration will not cause disruption if crystallization is present? It was so before, it will be so again. Cultivate responsiveness to the great ones, aim at mental expansion and keep learning. Think whenever possible in terms abstract or numerical, and by loving all, work at the plasticity of the astral body. In love of all that breathes comes capacity to vibrate universally, and in that astral pliability will come responsiveness to the vibration of the great Lord. This summation of process and of the forms is equally true of God and his cosmic creative work, of the soul as it builds its instrument for expression, either unconsciously in the early stages or consciously in the later, of the disciple as he seeks to express his realization of the work through group work and the organization of his life, and of perfected man as he learns through experience to center his forces on the mental plane, and from there accomplish his purpose in generating and producing those thought forms which mold the minds of men and embody in themselves that aspect of the universal mind which is needed for the right production of that immediate fraction of the plan which his age and generation require. All these various applications of the rule could be elucidated and enlarged upon. Our problem, however, must be kept clearly in mind. We are conscious souls, or in process of becoming conscious. We are beginning, through our meditation work and our application to study, to work on mental levels. We are creating forms continuously, pervading them with energy and sending them out to fulfill their function in line with our realized subjective purpose. The emphasis should be laid upon the word realized in the above paragraph. According to the clarity of vision and the depth of the inner realization, so will be the adequacy of the created form, and so will be the strength of the life which will enable it to perform its intended function.
That's man, that to me, that hit me pretty hard there, as far as the world that we're operating in, and how much of it we have in we're creating,
Mm-hmm.
and how this life that we're living is being molded around the plan and purpose. It's really unbelievable when we can start seeing those changes.
Mm-hmm.
And then to know for ourselves that this is actually happening, even if it's just a tiny bit, and then that kind of, I assume, that grows and grows into a bigger understanding, but it's unbelievable. Please, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, sir.
Oh, no, all good. Emphasis should be laid upon the word realize. Okay, I read that. Up to the present time, the majority of aspirants in the world express the results of little and weak thought, but rapid action. The goal for students should at this time be rapid, concentrated thought and slow action. That slow action, however, will be potent in result. There will be no lost motion, no delayed reactions, and no tendency towards hesitation. The attention of the thinker being focused on the mental plane, the progress of his manifested thought will be sure and inevitable. When the idea is clearly grasped, the attention closely focused, and the energy or life aspect steadily applied, the result will be irresistible appearance and potent action on the physical plane.
Yeah, that just goes to show you how little we know about what we're looking at here.
No doubt.
We know nothing as we should. Right.
This thought must be borne in mind if the dangers of the left-hand path are to be avoided. Let me here make some statements in brief tabulated form, which will produce a truer understanding of the words left-hand path. We are dealing here primarily with those thought forms which man creates. One, the left-hand path concerns the matter aspect, and the life poured into the form serves only to vitalize the atoms in substance. The potency of the love aspect, as wielded by the soul, is lacking. Two, the form created is constituted of mental matter, of astral matter, and of physical substance. It lacks the soul contribution. Its purpose is in line with the development of form, but not in line with soul expression. Three, the left-hand path, therefore, is the path of progress for substance or matter. It is not the path of progress for the soul aspect. It is the way of the Holy Ghost, but not the way of the Son of God. I express this truth in these words as it serves peculiarly to make the distinction clear and yet preserves the integrity of substance matter and their unity within the one life. 4. All forms created at every stage are either confined to the left-hand path or embrace it and yet go beyond it and follow the right-hand way. This sentence provides food for thought, and its meaning is difficult to gather. It should be borne in mind that all forms, whether they follow the right or left-hand way, are alike up to a certain point. They travel the same progressive stages, and at one time in their career, they appear uniform and alike. Only when their purpose appears does the distinction become apparent, and hence the training of the aspirant in right motives as a preparatory step to true occult work.
Hey, we had that conversation before. We were talking.
We were.
That's exact. Here it comes again.
Yeah.
Just getting into our minds here. That's, not knowing, and it looks alike up to a certain point. Wow.
Yeah.
But
very wild.
But you shall know them by their fruits. Kind of thing, right?
One would hope.
It's not easy,
But
and
it
it
now.
literally
Right.
says it looks the same
Yeah.
up until a certain point. Wow. Okay.
They even travel the same progressive stages. One time appear, and at one time in their career, they appear uniform and alike. Only when their purpose appears does the distinction become apparent. And hence the training of the aspirant in right motive as a preparatory step to true occult work.
See, knowing purpose, that would require, I would want to say that would require some level of intuition.
Yeah.
Because, how can, because purpose can look like a two-way street a lot of times, right? Because good inevitably comes out of everything that is going on. So knowing the true purpose, that's all, it'd be almost either impossible to know, or it would only come through an intuition. When you don't know it, unless you do know,
Right.
is what I mean. Right. From a distance. I don't mean that from like, it's obvious when it's obvious, but That might have been confusing, but whatever.
The question might be asked, what is meant by occult work? True occult work involves 1, the contacting of the plan, 2, the right desire to cooperate with the plan, 3, the work of thought form building, and the confining of the attention of the creator of these thought forms to the mental plane. This is of so potent a nature that the thought forms created have a life cycle of their own and never fail to manifest and perform their work. And 4, the direction of the thought form from the mental plane and the confining of the attention to that specific enterprise, knowing that right thought and right orientation lead to correct functioning and the sure avoidance of the left-hand path. This is a lesson little appreciated by aspirants. They engage in emotional desire for the appearance of their thought form and the manifestation of the idea. They spend much time following the orthodox methods of work and in physical plane activities. They wear themselves out by identifying themselves with the form they have created instead of remaining detached from it and acting solely as the directing agents. Learn to work on the plane of mind. Build there your form, remembering that if you submerge yourself in the form for which you are responsible, it may obsess and dominate, and then the form will be the dominant factor and not the purpose of its existence. When the form controls, then comes the danger that it may be turned in the wrong direction and find its way on to the left-hand path, and so increase the power of matter, and it holds over sentient souls. And it holds over the sentient souls. Wow, there's a lot there.
It's dangerous. Yeah, it's dangerous in a way, man. Like when you're creating, and if you're holding people back, through your own selfishness somehow,
Right.
anyway,
Right.
that's a dangerous kind of a thing. So what, we're not consciously building. The difference is doing it consciously or not. That's the difference. I mean, the tendency towards the left-hand path is, I guess, unconscious anyway. But and then the real difference is when you consciously make that decision, as opposed to doing the right thing. That's when things get really probably.
Well, and I think it's an easy slip because it says here, it's really alluding to, or at least I think it's alluding to, becoming your higher self versus, I think, who you think you are here. I don't know.
Well, here's a good example of what I thought in my own experience. If I'm out there telling people to go read books that are more astral in nature, as opposed to books that will bring them up to the mental plane, I'm holding them back. That would be holding them. That's not good.
Right.
That's so, it would have to be, doing it consciously, and now only promoting material that I know would keep people higher or get them off of the astral onto the mental plane, because we don't want to keep people on the astral plane.
Right.
We want them off and moving beyond it. Right. So that this can go in every different type of, at every step of the way we're dealing with this.
Yeah. I was getting more at kind of the personal identification. Where it says here,
that may not be the greatest example there, but
well, I'm just where they wear themselves out by identifying themselves with the form they have created instead of remaining detached from it and acting solely as the directing agents. that's where I thought it's kind of alluding to. I'm not really sure now.
I think I confused you. My example was not a good example of what, getting people towards that, of me being pulled towards the left-hand path. That's not what I was saying there. But it's just an example of how we can hold people back, essentially.
Right. But this is indicating that people are actually holding themselves back because they're so into how they have self-identified themselves. Like,
this is your manifest your best life right here.
I am a financial manager versus who are you when you are your higher self, I think.
What's the Bible says something like the gates to hell are wide open, but you gotta, get
right.
thread the needle to get to where we're talking about.
Right. Finding your real purpose, I think, is what I was trying to get at, versus what you're doing in this physical realm while you're here. Anyway, you don't need to belabor that any further. I will move on.
Well, just the fact that the left-hand path is more prevalent and easier to lean towards is the key.
Right.
To watch ourselves.
Well, and I think that's where I was trying to go initially when I said it's an easy. So that's probably why we've referred to that middle path between the left and the right activity is so narrow, the razor's edge path, because it's so narrow. It's probably easy to fall to one side. And I see it that way, especially now, because, and I'm sure it's been like this for some time, but that's kind of how we're brought up. Go to school, become something of yourself. Okay, that's all good. And you got to do what you got to do to make a prosperous life for yourself so you can live in this world. But we shouldn't be ignoring who we really are and where we really are supposed to be headed. And the point there is to not let all of that physical astral world stuff consume you to the point where you can't move above and beyond it. And I'm probably confusing the matter more, but that's kind of how I see it now.
Well, I think we do need to work our butts off, and if there's money that's made, it would be the application of that the differentiation.
Right. And what is your motivation and desire for making that money?
Right.
Exactly. So we're not saying that it's bad to make money. It's a necessary thing. But what are the voice in your head? Why am I doing this? For what purpose? So
I think every step of the way, man, we're really probably just wrong about everything.
Probably.
Everything.
Because we know nothing.
Yeah, we're just wrong. Until you can really sit down and differentiate these two, how can you be right?
Right.
Ever. Can't be.
Yeah.
I guess
eventually it all has to shed away.
Once there's soul contact and the soul starts giving its impetus to move in a certain direction, and it's, that's where things become more clear, I think, right?
All right. It might be briefly added that anything that tends to increase the power of matter and add to the potent energy of form substance produces a tendency to the left-hand path and a gradual attraction away from the plan and the purpose which it veils and hides. Isn't that what we were just talking about? I guess we should have just read the next paragraph, but there it is.
It really is the needle, the thread in the needle here, though.
Yeah. All work in all created thought forms, whether they materialize as an organization, a religion, a school of thought, a book, or a life work of any kind, which express spiritual ideals and lay the emphasis upon the life aspect, come under the category of white magic. They then form part of the stream of life, which we call the right-hand path, because it leads humanity out of form into life and away from matter into consciousness. In an ashram of one of the great ones not long ago, a disciple asked his master to express this truth to him in such a way that though the words might be few, yet the import would be worthy of continuous consideration. His master made this reply: only the sons of men know the distinction between the magic of the right and left-hand pathways, and when they have achieved, these two ways will disappear. When the sons of men know the distinction which exists between matter and substance, the lesson of this speech will be grasped. Other lessons will be left, but this one passes. Matter and substance together work out the way of darkness. Substance and purpose blended indicate the way of light. And that concludes Rule 9. Only the sons of men know the distinction between the magic of the right and the left-hand ways, and when they have achieved, these two ways will disappear. The sons of men know the distinction which exists between matter and substance. The lesson of this epoch will be grasped. Other lessons will be left, but this one passes. Matter and substance together work out the way of darkness. Substance and purpose blended indicate the way of light.
Yeah, see, I heard here that, holds back any judgment as well, because we really don't know. And so all work and up above, you had read, all work and all created thought forms which express spiritual ideals and lay the emphasis upon the life aspect come under the category of white magic. Whether they materialize as an organization, a religion, a school of thought, a book, or a life work of any kind. So we need to really pay attention to and hold and reserve judgment until we take a deep look at what's really going on.
Right.
On the deeper sense of this. And what was the intention behind it? I believe is is there sincerity in it? And I want to say the left-hand path can do that as well and be selfish about it, but make it look good.
Sure.
Make it look good when it's actually selfish. But
it even indicated earlier that as you're treading along that, it's going to look very similar until a certain point. But then here in this closing quote, it indicates once you can make that distinction, both ways disappear. So that's indicative of the blending of the two.
So, yeah. So now we're seeing, so I guess we came from the mental plane in the earlier parts of the book. We're learning about the astral plane and how these things make their way down now. And man, is that something deep? That is so incredibly abstract to think about, or to, I imagine, to grasp, which I don't, how this is being created around the initiate, disciple, those who are doing the create, how your life starts to converge in on the plan. Gradually. And I want to say, is when you begin to trust this process, it goes. It moves out on its, everything will be given to you that is necessary. All the things you need will come to you. Everything around you will start to bend for the benefit of the plan and purpose of these thought forms that have high or, proper, or in line with the plan,
Right.
be manifested on the physical plane. But it just makes you wonder, how, and it doesn't really differentiate that from, each human being is manifesting, right? Is that right? Their life.
Hmm.
So, wow.
Well, that's that creator aspect, right?
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. There's so much there. Lots of contemplating to do on that.
Oh, no doubt.
And there's so much in this because, it's so easy for us to look at our life, as it has played out, and how these energies can take one direction or another, and cause problems in the environment initially, in order as the bending of the environment happens.
Right.
That's the issues that are being created are beneficial in themselves, because it's going to be bent to where it needs to be to make sure these things happen. Well,
Tension promotes growth, right?
Makes you really want to make sure that what you're building is appropriate and proper.
Right. And that you're doing it with the best, you're doing it with the right intentions.
You'll know. I think if you have selfishness built in somehow, or if you're literally just doing it for the whole.
I want to think that everybody can just make that distinguish that, right? And then it becomes a matter of, or at least this is where my thinking is leaning now. It becomes a matter of, are you edging on that left-hand path when you're doing these things for selfish needs, and you're doing these things for selfish needs?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think it might be unconscious to some point as well, because you're just doing it based on your conditioning. Like you don't see anything wrong with manifesting your best life.
Mm-hmm.
To a certain extent, that even makes sense until you have more knowledge or more expansive consciousness, I guess. So you understand that this is non-separative, right? And this is about the whole, and we're all connected. Mm-hmm. There's a lot there. There's always a lot there, but that's great. We can look at everything that we've done in our lives and see and kind of pick it apart.
Right.
See what our motivation was at each step. And if it really was selfless, or if there was a tinge of selfishness still built in.
Right. And yeah, and it hits every aspect. Even this that we're doing now, that to make sure that you're doing it for truly selfish purposes, and not just the truly selfless purposes, and not just being selfish and doing this and thinking that this is what's going to help you move up the ladder on the 7 planes of our solar system.
I don't know, man. I don't think that's possible.
You don't? Well, no, maybe not.
It's reoriented. Once it's reoriented, I think it's free. I think that's possible to a certain extent by like, life coaches, wanting to like looking through a book and going, let me look at careers that I think I would be good at and get popular with, that I can attract a lot of people to. I'm going to be a life coach or
That's
something.
kind of right. That's kind of where I was going with it. Like,
Yeah.
like you might be helping people, but is your motivation for doing that, like, is the helping of some people just happen to be a byproduct of what you're doing?
Yeah, because you're working on your personality or your image or your popularity or fame.
Right. And all the while you could be you could be filling those people's heads with a bunch of BS.
Totally are.
Yeah. So,
Well, and then I guess we can't really judge that either,
No.
because good comes from everything. And some people need, everything that we're exposed to at the time is probably something that was appropriate for that time.
right.
Yeah. It goes both ways. It's always, you can always look at it from every different plane, I guess. Depends on our perspective at the time. But in knowing that if you move higher on the evolutionary scale in a sincere way, and by doing so is going to help not just you, it's going to help many others more than not. That is not selfish, man.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the same kind of selfish.
Right.
It can't be the same kind of selfish, because you've given up the left-hand path and everything for yourself. This is the growth is not even for you any longer. The growth is for others. You're not going to get anything that you ever wanted out of it. You get nothing out of it. You lose everything out of it. So there's a different, and once that reorientation takes place, redirecting of aspiration takes place, I think, that the whole game kind of changes. Even though we're probably whittling away at some of the things that we do want to hold on to. It's not to say that our letting go process is complete, because, we saw that it isn't complete all the way up until the fourth initiation. And then the fifth isn't until you really get the blazing realization.
Right.
And I think that's what we all expected of enlightenment, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think? I mean, I didn't know. I didn't know anything about it when I started, my thing. But I think, we're anticipating this big explosion, and that's not how it goes.
Right. That's kind of where my head was probably at in maybe this time last year. And I think you and I talked a little bit about this before we started reading the chapter. Where when it becomes you kind of losing the mysticism of it all, and it's just a part of your being now. And it's I don't know where I'm going with it, but it's different as you progress. I think it becomes subtle, and quiet is a good way to put it. It starts to get quiet and you get comfortable.
This is not about experience any longer.
Right.
There's no real,
and there's no need to chase those experiences because you had it. Set it aside. It's time to move on to the next thing, because it's all part of the growth pattern.
Event.
It's just a continuous growth pattern. Yeah.
Like a whole new school.
Yeah. Trying to go back to those experiences could be what's holding you back. So.
Oh, I've gotten counseled for that I had gotten counseled for that a number of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
I'm
sure.
sure you counsel yourself on it too.
Now I can counsel myself on it, but I didn't. It's very difficult to see that
Right.
because you still think that you have this aspiration for God, or your desire is for God, but it's a selfish desire up to a point. Prior, you're
Right.
like it is a selfish desire up to a point because
Well,
you want to be wrapped in love and you want to feel all cozy and like have all these, body sensations of bliss flowing through your body. And you think you're going to listen to all this amazing, harmonious music that you can levitate with. And, come to find out, above that, it's more quiet. And above that, it's more quiet. And it's quiet. We got to let all that go. And then, not to say that there isn't experiences to be had, but we
right.
don't have they come and go. But I think we thought, I think I personally thought I was going to live in some, blissful state where I just, tell everybody you love them and sit, in the lotus position all day and like, bless people or something. That's not how any of this goes.
Right. Right.
Not even remotely close. Yeah. Carla had, she's had to watch this event with many people. And when people come and they think that they're enlightened, or they think that they've gotten somewhere in this, it's a hard thing to find out that, wait a minute, so you're telling me I just took like my very first step into this event and I actually didn't really get anywhere yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you want people to enjoy that period because it can be blissful and wrapped in love, and you sense love pouring from your heart and you're like ecstatic for a minute here and there. But then you find out that's going to be temporary too. And then it levels off, and then we're moving on, and then moving on, and then apparently, it just keeps going. It's never ending. But maybe that selfish aspiration inevitably turns into unselfishness at some point too.
I think it probably does. It has to.
Right. Yeah. Because of course you want to be closer to God. It's what I want to go to. I'm going to God. You said, I'm going to God. Right. I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds pretty selfish now. Right. When you say that out, if you say that out loud, so you're worried about yourself is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really what we're saying when we say that. So you're worried about yourself and you're not really worried about anybody else because you're
right.
Wrong. But then at the next level, you become more worried and concerned with the group as opposed to yourself. So it's just a notch up, more inclusive aspiration, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some, I don't know, man. That's so interesting. The whole astral plane, and then getting onto the mental plane, and then, first you have to recognize that there is that shift. You have to be able to kind of get oriented towards, the two and where you're at during different points during the day, and,
mm-hmm.
and then get kind of like know that you need to go up and prevent yourself from going down.
And how easy it is to drag yourself down sometimes. It's
and then when some energies come, inevitably you're gonna be selfish.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, there were times when I recognized that I was very selfish. Because you're like, well, this isn't how my life is going to be. That's selfish. I need to make my life more. No, we ain't doing that.
Right.
I am not going to, this guy, that personality is not going to be the one to do it. The personality doesn't know the plan or the purpose. So anything that the personality is working on is not really appropriate. So that has to be subdued.
Unless maybe you're looking through that lens of how you shift yourself to, as it might relate to the rest, others, if that makes sense. Like, is it selfish to kind of self-reflect and say, okay, I need to change this about myself, but you're doing it in terms of, I need to change this because if I don't, it's negatively impacting others around
you're
me.
right. No, that can go both ways too.
Right.
I think, right?
Yeah. But then again,
If you're just not happy.
That's not being selfish. I guess that's being selfless, because you're like, I gotta fix myself because I'm having a negative impact on everybody around me, type of thing. So
That is not selfish.
That is not selfish.
No, but somebody going, I'm not happy with what I've been given, even though you have plenty, and saying, I'm going to divorce my wife and I'm going to leave my kids and I'm going to I want a bigger house, or I want more of this. I want more of that, physically attractive things, or that's going in the opposite direction than what this goes.
Yeah.
Now, is it necessary, like you're saying, at times to make adjustments? I think, that's on a deeper level, you would know if it'll just happen.
Right.
It's inevitable.
And it does.
Because this whole thing is bending to the plan and purpose, right?
Right.
That's what he said. You can't see it bending because it's so gradual.
Right.
And that's what awareness of the whole thing. This is all just about being more aware of ourselves and where this is going. Because at some point, I think it's futile to even worry about yourself anymore. When you know that it's not about yourself, then how could you worry about yourself?
Right.
And even then, there's still probably a slight transition period, an orientation. But you find out inevitably this isn't about yourself. And then you've been all about yourself. So now you got to get to the point where it's not. And then there's a clash again. And then it'll eventually be transformed into what it's supposed to be. But life can, if you don't know this material, life can appear to be very painful.
Right.
Through this process without having this awareness of what's going on.
Right.
It would be absolutely miserable. It would be absolutely emotional turmoil on such a more high level than this.
Well, yeah. And you might find yourself restricting yourself from working through some of these things that you actually need to work through to push through and raise up, right? Like if you're unclear of what's happening and what's going on, and you don't have some clarity to help you push through the right way you need to push through that stuff, you can find yourself on the wrong side of the track.
Yeah, totally.
And knowing these materials will make it a little bit easier in that sense, understanding, reading through this, but it doesn't mean it's going to make the path any easier for you. It's still going to be a difficult, long road. But what it does is, I think, is it gives, or at least for me, it's given me clarity on what's kind of happening around me and what it all means, so that I know if something comes up that I need to work through, I need to work through it in a certain way, versus maybe just trying to avoid it altogether. Because let's face it, something's going to hit you. It's going to hit you unavoidably. You can't avoid it. It's going to happen. So I'm kind of just rambling, but I think you know.
No, and I think that's for our benefit. All of those
Yeah.
things is the bending.
Absolutely. Right.
And as the planetary influences come in, it's guaranteed.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. That's what I know Carlos says, evolution here is guaranteed. That this system's built that way.
Mhm.
And then so the energies that you're receiving at the time, that's what's happening, and that's doing the bending. Sometimes they clash, sometimes they're more pleasant. Sometimes, we have it cycles, winter time is dark, the darker months, and then the lighter months, and then and the cycles keep going. So we start to look at it like in terms of energy. And then, as DK was saying, vibration, right, and frequency, and cycles, and we can start to relax and just be the onlooker. And what he's saying, be the creator, but be cognizant of what we're creating. And I think there's a period where you just refrain from creating for a while, even. I want to say, because you know that you don't know anything.
Right.
So what I guess you might technically consciously be, I don't know. That's an interesting thing. There is how the inertia, I don't know. That's wild. Because I want to say, and he talks about building these big things, and then they don't work out because the thought forms weren't complete, right? Because you're learning, right? And then the astral plane, as Carl always says, is like Legos or bubbles. You can build things up and then smash it down and rebuild things here.
Right.
That's not true on the higher levels.
Right.
This is like the training ground to do this. Which that's super deep. Because right now you're building your environment, and later on, who knows what you're going to be building.
Right.
You're building this around us now, but then later you might. Look at the planetary logos has built the planet. The solar logos built this whole entire, the solar system, right? So, and then humans are the other creators.
Right.
On the smaller scale. And then so there's all these aspects of this, all this work being done behind the scenes that we just have no clue about.
Or just take it for granted.
Oh yeah, everything. Which you gotta.
There's so much more.
And we can't see it happening is the problem.
Well,
we're blinded from the process.
I think it's probably some intent behind that. And that brings us back to, we really know nothing.
Nothing. I would reckon until I bet you the day that you can start to see etherically, you may begin to start having a good understanding of the outer expression of this.
Right.
But until then, I would, we get mind stuff and some knowledge and stuff and understand, a gradual unfoldment. But that would be, I don't know. But to know, like in your full being, I think that when it all kind of comes together, like with etheric vision, probably.
Mm-hmm.
To see how everything is, even if it's just a glimpse, to see how it's all connected and how it's all working behind the scenes, or what we can't see. And then all the book work that we've done and all of the invocation, evocation work would begin to make sense at that. It would make actual sense in reality, right? It would be brought in, because now we're kind of working. I don't know. Although we know some things, we don't know nothing.
Right.
But if you saw it, you would know it. Like, and if that was on a full-time basis, then you're pretty well knowing. Yeah, at that point.
I would think by that point, yes.
I don't know when that comes into play.
And not trying to anticipate when it might.
No, but it does make sense that would be a prosperous, that would be a happy day, I think. You get to know quite a bit. Confirmation. I've heard stories about it, about etheric vision, some basic things about how you actually see the connection and how things are connected, and how influences are being put in, and there's different aspects to it. But yeah, I imagine that would be very cool. I have no experience in that whatsoever.
Nor do I, that I know of. But like you said, I think that's something we would know
Someday, maybe.
when it happens.
For sure, someday.
Yeah. Maybe not this lifetime, but
whenever.
whenever, man.
It's something, and then, no selfishness there, because having that is only beneficial to other people
Right.
you encounter.
Right.
Because you then can, you can see, and then in seeing, know better how to react and respond. And so, yeah, you can be more intelligent about the whole thing. But us building this foundation is key, I believe. And Carl always said, she's always saying, building this foundation into this is just absorb. And then that evocation process will synthesize stuff in our mind as our brains can handle it and are irradiated to handle it. So the whole thing really does play out perfectly, amazingly. I can see a huge, in my own self, honestly, I can see a huge difference in the last, since I met Carla and since I've been studying these books. And
well, even just since you and I retouched about it a little over a year ago.
Yeah, huge
there's been an immense amount of growth that I've seen in you, and you've probably seen that in me. I know that I feel like I don't even remember I don't remember who I was back then.
Right.
Yeah,
so. If you think about the day that we talked, that one day. And
yeah, I know that I was very emotional charged about things back then. And now it's just like, yeah.
You were also not happy.
Right.
Sir.
Right.
Yeah, and confused a little bit, I want to say, about what you were looking at with your eyeballs.
And I had very selfish desires. I wanted.
But you did know. Right. You did know that you were waking up. You knew you were waking up.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. And that could have been happening for quite some time.
Right. And I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
Because your world was being bent.
Many directions, right?
Yeah, that was cool.
So, and it had been for a number of years, just sometimes subtle, but you hit that breaking point and something happens. And the right person reaches out at the right time.
Oh man, I remember that conversation well, actually.
So
good stuff. No, this is incredible. I mean, how can you tell people the benefits? I don't know.
I don't know either. You just kind of got to live it.
You got, how can anybody hear how amazing and how transformational this stuff is for the, if you give yourself and have faith in it, that in a year's time, you would be almost not remember yourself a year ago.
Right. Well, a lot of it comes, you kind of got to let yourself go in a sense where, I mean, the simplest way I can put it is you kind of got to put yourself in the place where you need to forget everything that you think you know. Open your eyes, open your heart, open your ears, and be be non-resistant to new and different information coming in, because that is what really helped to clarify for me what the heck it was that was going on and why. And here we are. So
That closed-mindedness is a killer.
it absolutely is. And that's very, very prevalent these days.
Beliefs
Yep.
are
And I get it, because it's shoved down our throats our entire lives. But you gotta let that go. That's the first step. You can gain a better understanding for yourself. And you just work it from there, and it becomes just this growing, beautiful thing.
As and you're right, but as I see it a little bit, people also don't know how advanced they already are.
Right.
You can be sitting there unconscious of everything, but your soul could, and you could be ready to explode, boom, immediately with just a couple bits of information that will change your life, and then get you back to essentially where you're supposed to be very quickly.
Right.
You can, and you could, I guess you could say recapitulate past growth very quickly. So there is that initial change is a big one.
Yeah.
Regardless, to go from unconscious to being conscious again. And then, the waking up process is not really that's confusing a bit. But it doesn't have to be when you have these books and when you have people like you around to know what's going on. So
right.
All right. Well, we're getting into Rule 10 next week, bro. And
yeah. So I know for a fact we
will
not get through Rule 10 in one session. It will probably take several, at least, because it's pretty much
160 something, 61 pages.
I mean, just from looking at the blue book, because I have all the chapters or all the rules mapped out here, tabbed out, it's like a quarter of the book. So it's going to take some time.
It's about, thought form building and the centers, the energies, it includes a lot. So we're going to get into some good stuff here. This is where it's the science or the bio. This is where it gets deep.
Yeah.
We're going to get
This is where the science meets.
Yeah.
Astrology's in there a little bit, I think.
The centers,
yep,
how they work and come into play with with the body and the different glandular system. This is huge. This is gonna be great.
It'll take us some time, but it'll be good. It's broken out in subsections, so there will be some natural breaks there. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna try to do some read ahead this week. But yeah. Rule 9.
Yeah.
Purity.
All right, buddy.
Be pure.
Ready to call it?
Call it. I'll talk to you next week.
All right. See you.